Anything's possible. Let's hop on that Insano cam on King's Cove for map number 1. In the bottom right, in the green, he is BlysK.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, in the purple, representing Epic, it's RiSky. Everybody, of course, always excited to see what RiSky's going to bring. Such a macro beast, and it was, I think it was last season we got to see RiSky. I think there were 80 investors on this map against Bud Always in the Zerg vs Protoss. Over the course of the game, you know, at one point he lost about 20 in a fight, so he built another 40 to make up for it. It was,
That's a natural response.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you get supply blocked, so you make just 10 overlords get sick of it.
Oh yeah, the laser move. He's like, no, I don't want to be supply blocked. He's like, I've never been supply blocked past 90 supply. And we're like, but that's because you're always at 90 out of 110. 90 out of 200. Sorry, it's like you're at 110 free supply. It's always cool to see those big reactions there. But yeah, definitely RiSky is like. You talked about how he might have a mixed style, you know, training in Korea, but being from Europe as his kind of origin region. Well, he's definitely got the European late game. I will sit there and play really good Broodlord Infestor Spore Crawler, slowly crawl across the map, taking one base at a time. But at the same time, I do question, you know, staying in Korea, especially the more you practice custom games with the other players playing over there, and especially the Korean players, it is inevitable that you'll start to do more aggressive build orders and kind of starting to, you know, get some more timing attacks mixed in, because that's just where so much StarCraft history is. You've got players who know how to play a series because they've been playing GSL for a decade now. You've got players who played Pro League for years. So there's a lot more build preparing, a lot more let's snipe my opponent on this specific map and take advantage of this specific weakness. So I'm really curious to see, you know, what RiSky has been doing to study his opponents and how he's going to adapt to them here.
The funny thing is, last time he played against Protoss and WCS, Probe, I think it was, maybe in one of the qualifying matches, he actually played really aggressive. He was doing Niduses, he was doing Roach Ravager timings, that sort of stuff. Which is why, to me, he has a bit more of a mixed style. But you're absolutely right, he does have the knack for those slow, patient games as well. And I think that's just what makes him so dangerous. He can do either one. Whereas you look at a player like BlysK, and his style for a long time has been a lot more calm, definitely more free base and timing oriented, but you never know, because he comes back each season and he has a slightly different flavor each time.
I feel like he's got that kind of heart of the swarm, wants to have a good plan, and like you said, goes towards a sharp timing attack, right? He's very good at kind of planning towards one. Right now we see Glaives on the way, so that's a cool opening. Something we don't see as much, but I mean, it was like Classic versus Dark last year, I think it was. There was this series where just the number of different adept proxies and like prism timings of adepts that came out, and it catches greedy Zergs off guard. RiSky, though, going for a Roach Horn. He's not trying to rush up to Hydras or anything like that, so he'll have the right tech out. If he can get wind of this, it's going to be really, really nice for him.
And he's trying for it too. He's got a Ling out on the map, scouting around. He's got one Overlord over the natural, another one near the third, and he's actually going to see this Warp Prism head out. So that's a nice one for him. Getting that bit of information. But we'll see how this goes with BlysK. This is actually one of the things I really like about BlysK. He does stuff that's a little bit out of fashion. He'll sometimes whip out some really old builds, and they work because people they don't have those builds in the forefront of their mind. So yeah, we'll see how he goes. He's going to pick off his Overlord if he can, so that he doesn't get found out again too soon. Couple more gateways finishing up, and that Warp Prism's parked itself over towards the third base of RiSky.
Yeah, it does of course heal to full life upon popping out of that cocoon. At some point, the people who make those facial skin creams and stuff for anti-aging are going to figure out what goes on in a Zerg cocoon to always come out on full hit points. I don't know what happens because that thing was about to fall to pieces. It was deep in the red, and suddenly it's full
Stem
hit
cells,
points.
Man.
Stem cells, of course. Abathur weaponizing them for the swarm the way it should be done. And he sees the Robo Bay tech, so knows it's going to be something like Colossus after this. Immediately drops the Spire in response and is in position to shut down the Prism. Nicely done by RiSky.
Yeah. I mean, this is a bit of a non-event so far. He's just been found out. Yeah, RiSky got a really good scout off on the main as well, seeing, oh, what's that? A robotics facility, robotics bay. All right, drops the Spire, and you know, he's quite happily moving forward in the game here, continuing to macro up. Hasn't overcommitted to too many units here either, just enough to sort of poke away the units that BlysK is trying to drop nearby.
BlysK really wants to throw him off with this adept pressure. Right? The problem is his observer's being shut down. He can't even drop his adepts out to shade them into the mineral lines to threaten. It feels like RiSky's like BlysK has kind of come forward and tried to kind of take a jab at him to throw him off balance, and it feels like RiSky's just kind of sitting on his chest and going, no, you can't do anything. I see the whole map. My roaches are on top of your adepts. You can't throw me off in the slightest. Guess what? Up to 70 workers, and I've got a 4th base on the way. Like, RiSky's been in so much control of this early game. He's getting his muters out now, which the Phoenix is going to spot. And I mean, what do you do here is BlysK, you go, I'm going Disruptors and Blink Stalkers right now. Blink Stalkers, I mean, that gives you something against the muters, but he's just not ready to push yet. And fighting against muters with Stalkers and Disruptors is really not ideal.
No, it's not. And BlysK finally drops in here. He will get 3 drones. Not really able to get too much more there, but heads out with a Warp Prism. And now he's got a bit more of a force happening here. He's warping in some Stalkers, looking like he's going to try and head out with this Disruptor and Sentries, but you're right. The meters are already here. There's roaches in the middle of the map to meet this. Might get a nice shot off. Good spread by RiSky at the last minute, though. Minimize a bit of that damage, and here's where it starts to get scary for BlysK. He has to make some good decisions. He's actually pulling back with his army a little bit.
I think he thought by pushing through the middle he'd pull the muters back, but RiSky's like, hey, these don't do anything against Stalkers and Sentries. They're just going to hit the mineral line, and the army in the middle can't really push on a creep. So even after the good Disruptor shots, I mean, we're looking at 70 drones versus 50 probes. We'll look at lots of Roaches, Ravages on the way, Zerglings, Bane speed, and RiSky's continuing to drone in the midst of this. Like, he is so far ahead economically. I dare say he's really towing the line of greed at this point, and maybe even stepping slightly over it. But, Disruptor shot. Nice. Does take out a Roach and a Ravager. A second one goes down. Does take out a pair of Roaches, but good spreads here from RiSky, mostly mitigating that damage.
Yeah, and BlysK just pulls back. He's lost a few more probes over here. RiSky doing a good job at finding bits of damage, and BlysK is having a harder time dealing with this because he's just got Blink Stalkers. He's trying to push at the same time, and splitting his attention between the two is quite difficult. So he's mainly focusing on the front right here, trying to find good Disruptor shots that'll turn the tide of the battle, but he's having a bit of a hard time. RiSky constantly got a potential concave happening here, and now BlysK is backing himself into a corner. Force fields go up, but the Biles crush through there, and he's actually in a bit of a sticky position. He's gonna possibly lose all these units, although with the Immortal he may just be able to clean this up.
Yeah, that Immortal really being the hero unit there. The problem is it is just Stalkers and Sentries, and behind this, the main base worker line's gone down. RiSky's still got 75 drones and 4 base production. He's just got so much reinforcement about to come in, and of course the swap into the Zerglings, even without upgrades, going to do very nicely there. Blinks at the last second to try and avoid the Disruptor shot, but Vials are going to shut down the Prism, and with that, RiSky does manage to shut it down, push BlysK back. He's got the gigantic worker lead, and even though the muters have now fallen, it does not matter. RiSky is just large and in charge. And I think what I'm most impressed by with the Zerg player is how much he disrespected that push. He recognized it was like a Stalker Sentry Disruptor push, which doesn't have a lot of sustained damage output, right? Like it's really low damage kind of fancy units. You got like Force Fields, Guardian Shield, Disruptor shots, all which relies on, number one, a ton of attention, but also it can't really like base trade or like quickly get in between your rally points. It's like an efficiency composition that kind of picks away at you slowly. So RiSky just kept building drones, even while BlysK was trying to scare him with the initial push out. BlysK wasn't ready to push, and RiSky kind of knew it. He's like, I got mutas hitting your base. I'm just going to drone up in the midst of this, defend with the bare minimum. And it wasn't until really he had a nice economy that he massed up Ravagers, Zerglings, and Banelings. So now he's got that overwhelming horde of Zerg units coming forward. Even Banelings in the mix, trying to get on the center of those depths and sentries.
Oh, no.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, GG. Well played to RiSky there in the first game. Very clean ZVP from him. And BlysK got shut down pretty hard there.
Indeed. Very nice play by RiSky. And I like it, the way RiSky controlled the early game. Because remember, that was a Glaive Adept opening. And you might have forgotten that because we only saw about 4 or 5 Adepts with the Prism. And they managed to get 3 probes to 3 Adepts about 3 minutes after they first started pressuring. And I mean, we all understand that obviously there's things like opportunity cost, and especially when it comes to harassment and damaging economy, you've got to do the damage as early as possible. The earlier the damage, the bigger a chunk you're taking out of your opponent's economy, the more you're slowing them down. And to take out 3 workers for 3 adepts, which is a really bad trade, minutes later, it just shows how much in control RiSky was. He shut everything down. That was really good defense.
Yeah, I mean, he read him like a book. His scouting was really good as well, having Lings out, getting an Overseer in. So he saw the follow-up as well of Disruptors coming out. Even that initial Warp Prism he saw before it ever happened. So he had all the information he needed every step of the way, and he was really well set up. And at that point, you know, BlysK, he just couldn't really even come close to RiSky's territory without being spotted and without being chased out. So a bit of a rough one for him, but maybe in game 2, he can have a bit of better luck. Interested to see what chooses for, what is it, Kairos Junction that we're hopping into? Yeah. If he's going to stick to another sort of early game thing. Because I feel like, you know, you mentioned RiSky so good in the late game. Like, surely you want to try and hit him early or with something really chunky in the mid game. Don't take him to that super long game. I'm not sure if you've seen any long games out of BlysK recently, but certainly for me, I haven't seen him really go that deep, you know, upwards of 4 bases in a PvZ in a while.
Yeah, definitely don't think that's his forte. I feel like that last game plan was not bad, but I think there's some details in the execution which just, it's not like there were obvious mistakes, but it was like the slightest bit of weakness that RiSky was able to pounce upon. So, of course, we are going to be diving into that next map, and we will be starting, of course, in the top left with the purple player representing Epic. It is RiSky.
And in the bottom right, needs to put a win on the board to come back in the series. This is BlysK.
Did just say in the chat pre-game that is feels like maybe he didn't have enough warm-up. He says, oh, my fingers feel so funny. They just feel a bit off right now. So maybe not quite comfortable with his micro in that last game, but definitely something he'll have to clean up in map number 2. Talking, of course, about those details that went down in the early stage, it's kind of funny because with those Glaive Adept openings, like what BlysK was doing, it's not like the fastest possible Adepts getting across the map and doing damage. But there's kind of the ability to just kind of split 2 Adepts off, shade into the natural while dropping in the 3rd. Doing that sort of thing a few times in a row can do big damage. Waiting for your opponent to like move out or be slightly out of position, shading 2 Adepts in the back of the main. These sort of things can suddenly pick off 7, 8, 9 drones very quickly for a small commitment. So not being able to do that definitely hurt BlysK's opening. And I actually think of Rotterdam, even though he's not a pro player, but he's like the master of like the cheeky 2 Adepts coming in from the most unexpected angle, shading out of nowhere and ending up in a mineral line where there's no defenses. So I think that's kind of the play BlysK was going for. It didn't quite work out, but I was speaking about how RiSky was so in control. He skipped Ling Speed last game. And I think upon scouting the Stalker in the early stage and the fact that Warpgate had started straight away, he kind of just said, oh, I don't think this is a Stargate build. I know your Adept's not moving across the map because I sent my 2 Lings across. And it felt like RiSky was able to just kind of cut the corner of Zergling speed, get a faster lair than normal, a faster Roach Warren, and kind of just get a kickstart on his opening. So I've really got my eyes glued to what RiSky does here on a smaller map. And is he going to try to cut that exact same corner to get the advantage like last game? Because if he can do that again, we saw the power it gives him.
Well, there's the speed building there for RiSky. But, you know, that's not to say he won't be able to be very conservative with his units and stuff throughout this game, because I think that's one thing that I was pretty impressed with in the last game and previously watching him, is he tends not to overreact most of the time. You know, he makes just the right amount. He focuses on that economy really well, and gets up towards that point where he's got everything he could possibly need to defend against what you throw at him. And here he's actually going to get a couple of lings into the base, so this is pretty nice. Gets a nice early scout. He'll be able to see the robo building up here, and yeah,
Nicely
what more could
done
you want
here.
at this stage?
Yeah, getting the heads up on the robo, of course, going to be aware of all the many different options here, and how well can BlysK kind of adapt and react to the fact that robo is being scouted. He did start up a sentry once he saw those lings coming in, and going straight into the warp prism. Of course, the adept going to poke around the main base as well. Another gateway falling off the front here. This adept just looking for a bit of scouting, a little bit of damage if it can get it. But once again, RiSky defending fantastically with minimal units.
Yeah. I'd actually love to see BlysK do something a little cheeky, you know, like the classic build where he dropped the double Stargate after the robo. Or even like, actually, are people still doing the Marjorie build? You know,
yeah, it's definitely still there.
Yeah. Something a little out there to catch him by surprise might be a better bet. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say what would and wouldn't work, but
well, it looks like this is going to be a classic 7 gate, because no gases, no more probes. I mean, it's actually 5 gateways right now, but it's going to be stalkers and sentries. And I guess Adepts and Zealots warping in, just like a single Immortal and a Warp Prism. Bunch of gateways up here starting to push out. And I mean, 2 Roaches have started here. Does RiSky realize just how strong this push is? 5 Roaches on the way up to 46 drones versus just 30 probes. This is going to be a really scary angle coming in. No Roach speed, not a lot of lava to be building Zerglings. RiSky's definitely in trouble.
Yeah, he knows something's up though, because he's only making units. He's got an extra 2 Overlords popping out, so he doesn't get supply blocked here. But these units are already here, and the Roaches are still sort of grouping up. And RiSky immediately evacuates these drones. But beautiful force field from BlysK. He will be able to chop some of those up. Does have to be a bit wary as these units come down, but so far so good for BlysK. This is doing really well.
Yeah, that Warp Prism was hanging really far back, but 6 slow Zealots in the mix. I love this addition. They are Zergling Slayers. The raw damage output of those is absolutely nuts. So that Prism very far forward there does take a vial and a bunch of hits, but saves a Stalker on red hit points. That third hatch, good force field as well. Does take down a Roach and almost a second one. The third hatch already going down. BlysK is surprising with this attack, warping in more and more Stalkers. And I mean, pushing up that ramp, that's the hard bit. This is where the vials might be able to land. Is RiSky going to be able to hang on? He's outnumbered by the Protoss, but the Zerglings coming in. They're going to find the Zealots, though. The Zealots just cleanse those Zerglings so quickly.
Yeah, really good wraparound by RiSky, trying to get BlysK to take that bile to the face, but he does manage to muscle his way out of there. But RiSky's actually gaining some ground here. The Prism goes down. BlysK a little bit careless with the positioning of that, but his unit's also dwindling. He didn't have a lot of buffer left for that attack to reinforce with, so he's actually going to head out of there with 3 Stalkers. He did get that 3rd base, though, and he also got 8 workers. Is that enough?
You know, I think it should be fine. It kind of resets. It just would have. It's such a shame he lost the sentries and all those units, because if he kept those alive, BlysK would have been looking so good. I mean, he's got an Immortal and a Warp Prism, a second one about to pop. So the counterattack really does not look that scary here for RiSky. I just think BlysK needs to be warping in. Yeah, more Stalkers should do the trick. You can't really break in here as RiSky. You just want to try to pick off like the Cyber Core, maybe pick off the Gateway, apply some pressure. I mean, it's just Roaches and Zerglings in production. Only now does RiSky start up the drones. So he's really committing. But look at that. Nice reaction by BlysK, building a backup Cyber Core. He's just going to give up the wall for now. I'd love to see some sentries warped in, though, because that means if those Roaches overstep, you can really punish them.
With the second Immortal coming in, he will be able to pick up a few more Roaches from the side here. Got to be a bit careful. They are taking a couple of hits. Whoa, getting a bit close there. Stressing out there.
Very, very, very wildly aggressive move with the Immortals dropping on the outside of the wall. I think he was relying on his micro being kind of pristine. Does take a bit of a bruising on those Immortals, but like there's some really nice moves. RiSky filing the Zealots the moment they warped in. So they didn't even get to finish warping in. They just kind of got sniped down before they could do that. And Now it's kind of 2 base versus 2 base. RiSky's third just gets back up and starts mining, but he does not have a lot of workers. And it's going to be upgrades and Twilight counts adding on for BlysK. He's trying to work on upwards that way while pressuring with the Immortal drop. And the question is, do you go for the 2 base timing? I think with these upgrades on the way, BlysK needs a third Nexus. And if he delays that too long, RiSky will get ahead.
Because the other thing is, RiSky kept pumping out units for like another 2 rounds there too. He didn't go back to drones until just now. So, you know, he's gotten up to 50 workers. That's not quite where he wants to be just yet, but he's got a solid force, so he can actually try and bully BlysK a little bit as he tries to take this third. But I do love that BlysK is out here again with these Immortals. RiSky looked like he was thinking about heading out there, but now he's going to pull back, just deal with this real quick, and then he may be able to push forward again. But yeah, this game's going a little bit better for BlysK.
Yeah, definitely is, but you know, he's got to keep up that Immortal production. He's got 4 Immortals out right now. He's going to try to retake that third, and that's the most important thing for BlysK, because as long as he doesn't have that third, he's kind of in a box, and it makes it easy for RiSky to predict what's going to happen. He says, I mean, okay, I can just keep massing units, but the moment that third Nexus gets established, RiSky has to start asking himself questions about what the follow-up is for BlysK. You know, is Storm going to come down? Is there going to be more upgrades? Because at a certain point, Ravages and Zerglings don't cut it if the game goes long enough, but right now, he sees the third Nexus, and RiSky says, I think I've got the army, I'm going to jump on it. But with those sentries there, the force fields look like they could be very powerful. One good trap on the Ravages.
And that War Prism a little far forward, but those force fields, oh my goodness, not quite good enough. A lot of the Roach Ravager gets on top of BlysK army, and he loses so much here. The Immortals, he's struggling to micro these against this much from RiSky, and that third base is not going to happen. In fact, he may be in trouble completely here. He doesn't really have an army. He's got 2 Immortals in that Prism and 1 in the Natural. He's desperately whopping in here.
I like that kind of composition here from RiSky. Notice how there's no charge, and after the early Zealots, he never replaced them. So the choice to just go heavy Ravager-ling there and just kind of jump forward with no charge Zealots to work with the Immortals and Sentries, he couldn't really punish RiSky just running in deep. The Ravagers, the Zerglings, neither of those are armored units. Without Zealots there to offer their raw damage, even with some force fields, he couldn't punish it. No, Biles on the Prism. That's going to finish it for sure. I mean, these Ravagers can just pick away at this just about endlessly. Desperation Sentries trying to warp in slowly, ever so slowly. The Immortals here hoping they can make it happen, but I mean, look at that. Bile rain all over the map. There's no way you're getting to the other side of the map. There's even swarm hosts on the way over now.
Yeah, and he has just nothing to do with that. RiSky's in a 4th base behind this as well, and he's just continuing with the unit production, only now thinking about some upgrades just in case. But BlysK is in dire straits at the moment. He's having a hard time holding this off, and with these Locusts coming in, he just can't afford to trade with that. Look at this damage coming out from RiSky, and he's going to get a full surround on this army, muscling his way forwards, and BlysK can only save so much with that War Prism.
Oh, yep, that's the Zerg Horde there. The Swarm just charging on in.